On December the 15th, 1997, Vince McMahon delivered a direct address to followers of his increasingly horny product. Attempting to justify the once family-appropriate product's rapid descent into, well, blood and tits, McMahon opined that you, the audience, are quite frankly tired of having your intelligence insulted. Simplistic morality tales were out the window, and in their place, complex narratives where the divide between good and evil was never so clear. Fast forward quarter of a century or so, and WWE barely trusts its viewers to remember a plotline for the duration of an ad break. Paying attention is fun though, honest, and WWE has even proved it over the years with some incredible callback spots that were literally years in the making. My name is Adam Cleary, and these are 7 wrestling moments that had a major long-term impact. Number 7, Daniel Bryan and John Cena's Velocity rematch. Anybody who watched an exceedingly wet around the ears Daniel Bryan do the honors for a still green though entirely yellow John Cena on a 2003 episode of Velocity would have had synapses flying in their old memory hole when the two met again at SummerSlam 2012. The pay-per-view clash featured the pair as its headline attraction rather than a routine C-show squash, but the action was identical. As the bell rang, Bryan grabbed Cena with a textbook armbar, followed by a back and forth grapple, only for Cena to then reverse it into one of his own. The sequence was an exact replica of their obscure Velocity exhibition, but the result this time was different. Whereas Bryan could simply out-wrestle a rookie rapping Cena 9 years prior, the champ now had him scouted, taking him to the floor into a headlock. You see, there was a point to watching Velocity after all, I told you. Number 6, CM Punk and Daniel Bryan's Code of Honor. Though the champion versus champion feud between CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, which had peppered the Raw and SmackDown super shows of early 2012, would eventually grow tetchy, it began on a note of honor. The respective title holders graciously bowed towards one another and shook hands. As implicitly confirmed by Punk, who retweeted a fan voicing his approval of the act, the show of respect was intended as a Code of Honor handshake, harkening back to the pair's days in Ring of Honor, where such a gesture is mandatory. Some 8 years prior, the fresh-faced pair met in a near 30-minute classic at Ring of Honor's earnestly titled Reborn, helping build the budding starlets to the attention of the wider masses. Number 5, The Rock can't see John Cena's second people's elbow. Though Cena famously never gave into the darkness during his centuries atop WWE's tree, his Sun Life showdown with the Great One nevertheless positioned him as the de facto heel. Rock might have abandoned the fans for Hollywood, but there was never a doubt in the nostalgia-fueled audience's mind he wouldn't be welcomed back as a returning hero. As such, Cena's divisive nature was more divisive than ever on the night. At one stage, a totally not heel John Cena, inhaling the chloric atmosphere directed his way, mugged off the crowd by attempting to hit Rocky with his own trademark people's elbow. But petards were built for a hoisting, and Cena's mockery saw him walk straight into a rock bottom and a defeat. It would be a different story a year later though, despite, once in a lifetime and all that, at Mania 29, as a wiser but equally derisive Cena teased the exact same spot which had ran him aground in Florida. Only this time, he pulled up at the ropes to goad The Rock with a grinned "you can't see me." Dwayne fell for the bait as he swung out in confused rage. Cena reversed it into an AA. Or at least he tried to anyway, only to be caught in a reversal himself. Cena might have learned from his mistakes, yes, but he should have known that The Rock always has a comeback. Number 4, don't sleep on Bret Hart's intelligence. With the ref down at WrestleMania V, I've done that joke once, I've got to stick with it, Roddy Piper was all set to clean a bloodied Bret Hart's clock with the ring bell and finish him off for good. But ultimately, he just couldn't bring himself to such an act of atrocity against his family friend. The beauty of this moment was that as one of the greatest heels in the 80s, everybody knew Hot Rod had that in him. This was no phony Cena-esque don't give in to the darkness moment. So he just lamped the Hitman instead before locking him in his patented sleeper. Hart knew Piper's history as well as the fans though, and having scouted the move, sprung a masterful reversal off the post for the pin. Now, 4 years later, Bret would pull the exact same trick out in his first bout with Steve Austin, only this time it was different. Rather than relying on his ingenuity to improvise and escape, the excellence of execution engineered one himself. By mockingly applying Stone Cold's old $1 Million Dream finisher, he goaded Austin into digging into his own back catalogue. No one had a better appreciation of Hart's career than the man himself, and repeating the lessons of 1992, he secured himself the same roll-up victory. Number 3, a rattlesnake once bitten. Now that particular reversal in the Hart-Austin match wasn't just a payoff for the Hitman, it was also the beginning of something else for the Bionic Redneck. Naturally, with this glaring weakness in the $1 Million Dream exposed, he stopped relying on it, only ever bringing it out in his most desperate moments when the risk of the roll-up was a price he needed to pay. Case in point, here it is at the very conveniently stylized WrestleMania X7 in the midst of his "I need to beat you" Rock heel turn. The final straw for the move, though, came just a few short months later when, wrestling Kurt Angle at SummerSlam, Austin reached into the darkness and pulled out the Dream once again. Angle, at the time positioned as the most competent and accomplished technician on the roster, immediately called back to Hart's ingenious escape and rolled him up for the nearest of near falls. Fool me twice, Austin thought, shame on me, and never ever used that move again. Number 2, Melina's split decision. Relatively talented though the paparazzi princess was during a time when the majority of her colleagues had poorer wrestling fundamentals than moppy, yep, that'll do. It's difficult to put her in that sort of category. Nevertheless, an act of rarely seen ingenuity in the era's not very good with a capital V, Divas division in 2010 proved that she too, if not walked along, at least stepped on the King's Road. At Night of Champions 2009, Eminem's former valet turned perennial women's champ challenged for Michelle McCool's still relatively respectable version of the strap. Naively, she turned her back on the incumbent during her typically bendy entrance routine, allowing the all-American diva to blindside her with a devastating dropkick mid-splits. Having given away the initiative, the challenger came up short in just 6.5 minutes. But just like Steve Austin before her, she would not make the same mistake twice. When the pair collided at the same event a year on to unify Melina's decidedly less respectable Vajazzle belt with McCool's besties bling, the Barracuda lured the opposition into her jaws. Once more, whilst performing her entrance routine, McCool made a quick-witted bid to marry boot to face. Only this time, Melina had outsmarted her, jumping up at the last moment and sending her opposite number flying through the ropes. That said, she did still lose, yes, though she did at least last 20 seconds longer than the previous effort. Look, I don't know, I thought it was clever, I'm sorry. Number 1, pretty much all of Misawa versus Kobashi, Part 3. There's a reason why Mitsuharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi were considered 2 of the load-bearing pillars supporting All Japan's glittering King's Road. Despite the best efforts of star-sailing cosmonauts Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada, the pair's trilogy spanning 1997 to 1999 remains virtually unparalleled today. But it's one spot in their concluding encounter which merits particular attention. Approximately half an hour of your Earth minutes in, the grueling blow-off mutated into an attritional rerun of their second clash, with both men employing their hardest-hitting moves in search of the elusive win. Eventually, a desperate Kobashi reaches into the darkest recesses of his arsenal for the dreaded Burning Hammer, a move so dangerous even the inventor himself rarely risked using it, only for Misawa straddling the turnbuckle to cut him off. So Kobashi reached even further back in time to 1993. That year, a less savvy but equally fiery Kobashi eventually succumbed to Stan Hansen when the brilliantly nicknamed Unsung Battleship smashed him with his patented brutal lariat from the top rope. In 1999, those exact painful memories were then transported onto Misawa, a callback 6 entire years in the making. And yet, even that wouldn't prove enough. Fittingly, after both men had exhausted their entire histories, it'd take something brand new to keep either of them down. This came in the form of Misawa's devastating, hitherto unseen Emerald Flosion. So, sorry, that all got a bit dramatic towards the end there. Those were 7 wrestling moments that had major long-term impacts. Let us know what you made of them all in the comments below. Of course, don't forget, why would you, to like, share, and subscribe. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I have, of course, been Adam Cleary, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.